So, this is all very strange. When I left Omagh CBS several years ago, I never thought I'd be back speaking at a virtual prize giving in the middle of a pandemic. But I want to begin by thanking Dominic McGrath for the invitation to speak to you all. Things are very difficult at the moment, as you know, and I don't want this speech, as it were, to turn into a homily or a sermon that tries to tell you that we're all in this together and that things will get better. I'm sure you've heard enough of those kind of platitudes in the last few weeks and months. Instead, I want to, use my own experience to give you some kind of reassurance, but also I think tips for coping with the difficult weeks and months ahead, and hopefully provide the right balance of hope and gloom as we face into this uncertain future. So there was a quote doing the rounds from Seamus Heaney. You probably remember it at the start of the pandemic. It was, if we winter this one out, we can summer anywhere. And it spoke really to the uncertainty of the time and the idea that there will be better things to come in the future. And it appealed to me and it appealed to thousands and thousands of others. But I think there's a different Seamus Heaney quote that for me captures the strangeness of our times. And in one of his relatively early poems, he talks about the tang of possibility. And it's a phrase that to me encapsulates the excitement and the wonder that exists in our world. The excitement that comes with being young and having the world at your feet. And it reminds me now of all the things we've lost, of how our field of vision has become narrowed because of the virus and the restrictions that have been introduced on what we can do. And to me, the quote is useful because it reminds me once of what we lost, but also it reminds me of the future that is still out there. Because for so long now, since March, we have lost that tang of possibility. It's been impossible on one level to plan for our future, to put our ambitions and our hopes and dreams into practice, but on another level, those simple pleasures, the idea that you can go off on a holiday, you can visit family and friends, you can go from one part of the country to another, or even cross the border, have become much more difficult and complicated, and in many ways, impossible. Our lives has become quite monotone, quite dull, and we're taking pleasure in very simple, mundane things, or at least I am. And that tang of possibility has become increasingly illusory. And that's something we're mourning in many ways together. I've recently moved from Dublin back to Omagh and now to Derry, and I'm living in a one-bedroom flat. I could never afford it if I was living in Dublin, and that's something that's giving me some pleasure, some enjoyment. It's a new adventure and a new opportunity. But quite literally, the walls around us have shrunken. We're surrounded by fewer and fewer opportunities for adventure and excitement, especially now as we get used to these dark evenings. But I want to move on a little bit from the gloom, because I want to focus on the possibilities for the future. And while we have no idea when a vaccine or a cure or an effective treatment for COVID-19 will arrive, I'm not yet cynical enough to believe that something won't arrive. If not next year, then the year after, or the year after that. And the good news for you guys is that you are still young. The good news for me in many ways is that I am still young. We have still many years ahead to make the most of a COVID-free existence, or so I hope. And I think that's really important because we all know that COVID-19 and its impacts have hit young people particularly hard, whether that's putting people out of work, destroying those experiences in college and university, or simply stunting, the ambition to travel and see the world. And I must say, the idea of starting a new job straight out of school or going to college or university, to me, it must be so difficult. What was once so real has become an unreality. Your experience of college is one that no one has ever had to experience before. No one has ever had to leave school before in the middle of this pandemic. So I find that, I feel that must be very difficult, and I completely sympathise with you all. But I want to tell you that not that things will get better, and not that the pandemic is an opportunity, it's not. But it is a moment to think about what you want to do, to where your life is going, to pause, to think, and to realise that at the age of, 18 or 19, you're still very young. I don't think when you're my age, 25, COVID-19 will be still with us. And believe me, there are plenty of people who tell me that at 25, I'm still young. And sometimes it's hard to believe, given that over the course of my journalism career, I've covered Brexit, this last US election, a global pandemic, the multiple elections and scandals and madness, really. So I feel a lot older than 25, but believe me, it is still young. And you do have plenty of time to do everything that you want to do. And I think it's a moment really to follow your passions and interests, or to find new ones. I think the most inspiring thing I saw during lockdown was that girl on TikTok who was raising tadpoles into frogs. Again, it's weird and it's strange, but it's finding a new source of possibility, a new source of entertainment in these strange times. So I want to, I suppose, leave you with the idea that while our world has shrunken, and while we don't really know what's coming next, and while your daily experiences of work or college are impossible really to imagine, and must be so frustrating, things will improve, and there is still time for you to do everything you want to do. I tell myself that every day. Sometimes I don't believe it, but I try and believe it. And that's, I suppose, the best thing we can do at the moment. So, I suppose in a world, as I said, where we're living often in black and white, where the thrills and the excitement and the spontaneity have disappeared, try not to forget that tang of possibility. Try not to forget the taste of ambition and hope in these long, dark months ahead. Thank you.